Firstly, can I take this opportunity to express my sincere thanks to John Jarton and the other organisers of the Jersey Farming Conference for inviting me to speak today. And of course, I'm so glad that the conference has been able to continue, albeit with a greater virtual element due to the difficult circumstances that 2020 will be remembered for. I was greatly looking forward actually to coming back to Jersey for this conference and meeting so many of you. The next speaker, Professor Nicola Spence, shown on the right of the slide, and we enjoyed a brief but most enjoyable and a memorable trip to Jersey in January 2019. And the purpose of that visit was to discuss the critical matter of plant health and biosecurity with Scott Meadows and some of his colleagues from the government of Jersey. And both Nicola and I will be touching on the issue of plant health and biosecurity during our talks. For me, however, it was lovely to return to Jersey. It was my first trip back to your wonderful island since my mid-teens, some 35 years ago. Back then, a long-lost aunt of my father, a very eccentric lady, suddenly and unexpectedly reappeared in our lives, and she happened to be living on Jersey. And so we came on holiday to visit her. And indeed, my first ever aeroplane flight was to Jersey to attend her funeral. And I can assure you there is at least a 20-minute talk recounting some of those experiences, but that's for another time. But it was actually when I was in my mid-teens that I decided, because of my love of the outdoors and particularly walking our dogs in the woodlands and forests near home, I decided that I should become a forester. I knew what I wanted to do when I was 15 or 16. So I studied forestry at Bangor University, where my daughter actually is now studying forestry. I then spent 4 years subsequently working for the Forestry Commission in Kent and Sussex. But then I was fortunate enough to gain the position of head forester for the Duchy of Cornwall, a job based in Cornwall, the county that my father and his ancestors were born in, and a county with which I have always had a very special affinity. And that was in 1996, so nearly 25 years ago. And I have to say it's particularly memorable this week because yesterday was actually my silver wedding anniversary, and the interview for the Duchy job actually fell during our honeymoon whilst we were in Cornwall, something my long-suffering wife likes to remind me of, that the Duchy had hold of me from the first week of our marriage. But 25 years ago seems a long time in a single role, doesn't it? Albeit a role that has been ever-changing. But in terms of the history of the Duchy of Cornwall, 25 years is but a brief period. The Duchy of Cornwall, just for a bit of background, is a private estate established in 1337, nearly 700 years ago, by King Edward III, in order to provide independence to his son and heir, Prince Edward, the Black Prince. And the purpose of the Duchy then, and indeed throughout its long history, has been to provide an income for the Duke of Cornwall, the eldest surviving son of the monarch and the heir to the throne. The current Duke of Cornwall, shown here with the Duchess of Cornwall during a visit to the Isles of Scilly, His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales. He is the 24th Duke, and he's actually the longest serving in history, with the revenue from the Duchy funding his public, private and charitable activities and those of his children. And His Royal Highness continues to be incredibly interested in and engaged with the Duchy. And his enduring philosophy is to nurture and improve the estate in a sustainable and in a financially viable manner, and therefore to be able to pass it on to future Dukes in a stronger and better condition. And again, I cannot really overemphasize how interested in and engaged with the Duchy His Royal Highness is. The Duchy estate actually extends beyond the geographical boundaries of Cornwall, despite its name. And in fact, it covers nearly 53,000 hectares, 130,000 acres of land across 21 counties, mostly in the southwest of England, and with a particularly large percentage of the entire holding, almost half of it actually, on Dartmoor. The duchy is best known as a rural estate, with its farms, livestock farms, arable farms, its forests, its rivers, its coastline, its mines and its quarries. And I will come back to the rural estate in a moment, but I thought that I would first highlight a few of the duchy's more unusual assets, just to give you some further information. So the duchy owns a number of historic properties. This is Ristormal Castle. We could say it's the birthplace of the duchy. In fact, it's situated just above the office where I'm working from now. And we know that the Black Prince visited there on at least 2 occasions. It's one of 4 castles that the duchy owns in Cornwall, and this one is managed in partnership with English Heritage. We own a nursery and garden centre just across the valley from me here in Cornwall at Lostwithiel, and that's one of our few in-hand operations, which has proved to be a great success. We own residential and commercial properties, including pubs such as the Duchy Arms in London. For those of you who have watched the James Bond film, we don't own the MI6 building, but we do own those 2 tower blocks to the left. For the sports fans, we own the Oval Cricket Ground, which of course is with Surrey County Cricket Club. And just so we all behave ourselves, we also own Dartmoor Prison. And since I'm speaking to an island community, we own the Isles of Scilly. I was there a fortnight ago, a wonderful group of islands off the coast of Cornwall. And we also have 2 royal residences, Highgrove House, His Royal Highness's principal home, and Llyn Wormwood in Wales, which is the Prince of Wales's Welsh residence. So just to show that we have a very sort of diverse portfolio, but best known perhaps for our rural estate. And I will talk about that now, given that we are, after all, at the Jersey Farming Conference. And His Royal Highness is, as you will no doubt be aware, passionate about his farming, his gardens, his trees, woodlands and forests. Highgrove, shown there again on that slide, the Prince's home, was purchased by the Duchy in 1980, and it has been transformed through his vision. The farm underwent organic conversion early on. The breathtaking gardens, if any of you have been there, were created from an almost blank canvas. And I can assure you that hedgerows, trees, woodlands, and wildflower meadows have been planted across the entire estate. And on so many key issues, it's a privilege having the opportunity to engage with someone who is such an inspiring leader on so many key issues. For instance, sustainable agriculture and forestry, climate change. His Royal Highness has spoken out for decades. I think some of you might have seen a documentary made a couple of years ago and showed him talking about plastic pollution in the 1970s. And sometimes it seems that only now are many others catching up with or waking up to the realities of his concerns and the urgent need to change how we do things. Now, much of the Duchy's landholding is tenanted. It's tenant farmland. And in fact, really, apart from the Duchy nursery, it's really only sun in what's going to be in a difficult climate going forward, providing opportunities for other income generation activities. You know, I want to work with the Duchy's tenants, not against them, in order to create truly resilient landscapes that will be better for the planet, for society, but also for the farming operation. And I do think agroforestry, which I define as the integration of trees and the farming operation, has a much bigger part to play, and we all need to be digesting books like this one recently published. There's no doubt about His Royal Highness's desire to see more trees planted. For his 70th birthday in 2018, we planted 3 avenues of trees to mark his birthday, one in Cornwall, one in Bath, and one in Herefordshire. And then last year, to commemorate, if you think about it, 50 years from his 21st birthday, which is his 50th anniversary of chairing the Prince's Council, effectively running the Duchy, a tree was planted on every Duchy farm across the whole Duchy, and a photograph taken of the tenants by their tree, a wonderful social history of life in the Duchy in 2019. Given the enormous threats posed by climate change, pests and diseases, we have to plant a wide, diverse range of trees. And that really applies actually to everything we do, the world of horticulture and agriculture, something His Royal Highness has long spoken out against, with our reliance upon monocultures. And certainly in the world of tree pests, that reliance is coming home to bite us now. And I ought to end where I began, really, with my visit to Jersey last year with Nicola to talk about plant health and biosecurity, an issue that His Royal Highness has spoken about and written about extensively over recent years. And in a video message for the 2020 RHS Chelsea Flower Show, he said, "We are increasingly aware of the contribution that plants and trees make to our quality of life. Only when the enormity of the risks are known will we take plant health and biosecurity seriously and enact rigorous precautions to protect our gardens and countryside." And as a result of some of His Royal Highness's work, we now actually have a UK Plant Health Alliance, bringing all the elements in the sector together to cover this topic. And we've recently launched a plant healthy standard we hope gardeners and retailers can work to. In conclusion, the challenges facing us in the land-based sector are enormous, but so are the opportunities. There are going to be changes, perhaps radical changes, but for those changes to be truly effective, to work for us all, we need to collaborate in ways that we have perhaps struggled to do so to date. But I, for one, think like conferences like this are an excellent opportunity to have that dialogue and build those relationships. And I only wish that I was there in person with you, but perhaps another time. Thank you.
Geraint, thank you. That was fantastic. I had no idea that the Duchy was involved in so much. That was a really fascinating talk, and I just love your passion as well that really came through. Thank you. We have had some questions. Thank you to everyone who is using Slido and popping those in there. The first question that I've got for you, Geraint, is how do we encourage farmers to plant more trees?
Well, it's a really good question, and but I think so much of it begins with communication, and that's where we are in the Duchy. The whole issue of communication. We need to make sure our farming communities understand the benefits of trees and woodlands and forests to their farming operation, to soil health, to water quality, to stock welfare, etc., and why we're doing this. But we also need to understand them. They know their farms, they know their land, they know those poor areas that really aren't very productive and which wouldn't be a great loss. We're not here to plaster their whole farm with trees. We are looking for those areas where it's the right place to plant trees and minimise the interference with their farming operation. So I think it is, so much of it is dialogue, but we just haven't been good at having that dialogue up to now, and things are now improving. For me, it will certainly involve going to the farms, walking the land with the tenants, and looking at the right place to plant those trees and take them on the journey with us.
In your experience, how open are people to the concept of exchanging shorter-term economic gain for longer-term sustainability? And the question is, are these initiatives easier to get moving on owned rather than rented land? And that's very pertinent to Jersey.
Well, I'm sure to a degree, if it's always going to be easier if you own the land and you believe that's what you should be doing, then you can get on and do it. I mean, there is a complication, of course, when there is a landlord and a tenant, and some of, I think, I'm not the expert here, but some of the agreements in tenancy arrangements are possibly out of date, given where we are now within the world of natural capitals and what we're trying to do. So it isn't always easy, but as in society generally, there are all sorts of tenants. We have some incredibly engaged tenants who are doing this anyway without us. And then there will always be the others you need take a bit longer to take on the journey with them. But we are determined to do that. And the other thing His Royal Highness has been doing when as having some starter farms. So we've actually deliberately created some smaller holdings when they become available to get young, forward-thinking tenants onto the duchy who are embracing all of this natural capital work.
How do you encourage improved biodiversity? Is it persuasion or is it payments, Geraint?
Well, it's I'm sure there's going to be all elements. I mean, money. We can't forget money. I mean, everyone needs to live, and a lot of the farming community, well, those who have woken up to it, will be looking at the loss of basic payment, etc., and wondering where the income stream will come from. So yes, there has to be payment, but we do also want to, we want our farmers to believe in what they're doing. We don't want this to just be a stick. There are positive gains for the farming operation, and also I think we should say, and this is in the forestry world as well, for our social license to operate. That's a term these days. It seems everyone's using that social license. We need to embrace these changes. Otherwise the writing's on the wall, I think. So it's an element of payment. It's an element of persuasion. It's going to be a bit of both, I think.
Someone also makes the point, though, there must be a trade-off between food production and tree planting. So how do you decide that priority?
Well, it's a really good point. And, for all these tree planting initiatives, and I sometimes, and now I'm at my point in life, I do sound a bit grumpy sometimes. I go into so many meetings and I say, okay, well, it's all wonderful making these announcements about however many trees we're going to plant, but, where's the land? Where's the money? Where are the skills? Where are the trees? There are so many obstacles. But I do think we have to be sensible. Should we be planting grade 1 arable land with trees? Probably not, or certainly not plastering the landscape with trees. More hedgerow trees, more field trees, maybe. But most farms have those awkward corners, those awkward areas that can be planted up, and I think we just need to be a bit smarter about being honest with one another about those areas of farm that actually would not be a great loss if they did have some trees on.
And final question from Andrew Legale. What are the key parameters which the Duchy uses, especially with regards to carbon sequestation, is it, to measure soil health?
Yeah, well, as I say, that work is, and this is not my specialty area, that work we're using the farm carbon cutting toolkit on that one. And so to the person who asked that question, I'd advise them to go to that and see the direction we're taking. I think one of the issues we are finding is that there is not enough commonality between the metrics. So we're doing a natural capital process, other people are doing a natural capital process. We're not necessarily all using the same metrics, the same standards, and that's likely to produce confusion going forward. So I think one thing we would like to see is a greater coming together of these techniques so that all the metrics are the same. That's not the best answer, I know, but go and look at the farm carbon cutting toolkit.
OK, we'll do that. And I'm going to squeeze one last one in. What about the concept of standard land care agreements conditioned towards improvement by the occupier?
Well, this is all, yeah, exactly. And this is all I mentioned we're using a memorandum of understanding where we've got existing tenancies. But this is what we're embarking on, trying to find out the best way to do this. And there are a range of options out there. Obviously easier when you have a new tenant coming in, we can actually put something into their tenancy. More difficult with non-established tenants. But that memorandum of understanding or that land care agreement, these are all the things we're looking at, and I know others are looking at the moment as the best way for a landlord and tenant to go forward together on this.
Well, Geraint, that has been really fascinating. Like I said, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for all the photos too. They were really great to see. And have a great afternoon. Thanks for joining us, and we hope to see you in Jersey soon.
I hope to see you all again sometime.
Thank you.